For Rocket Summer, the 1950s, which is the third week, I ended up reading a lot of Leigh Brackett, and which worked out really well. So actually, I read four of her novels and a couple of short stories. I don't know if I'll list the short stories. I forgot to write the names down, but I might touch on them. Anyway, the first book I read, I'm going to put these in order of the one I liked second best, and then the two that were good, and then the one that was an absolute masterpiece will be last. Um, the one I like second best is actually not written in the 1950s. I had the date wrong. It was from the 1940s, but I read enough 1950s stuff to qualify for the third week of Rocket Summer. Anyway, so what I read first of all by Leigh Brackett was The Sword of Rhiannon, which is a short novel, 1951. Here's a more updated. It's a sort of a planetary adventure novel, like her John Eric Stark stories. Similar setting, influenced very much by Burroughs, I would imagine, and a bit by C.L. Moore's Northwest Smith, I think. Thought I had another cover here. I'm going to be stopping to sneeze a lot. Bless me. That was a big sneeze that I spared you guys from. It's a planetary adventure, but it really points up right away one of the things that's so special about Leigh Brackett's writing. Uh, she wrote in many different genres. She was kind of a master of all of them. Anyway, this is about a sort of a Indiana Jones guy on Mars, a relic hunter kind of anthropologist, not anthropologist. What's the thing that Indiana Jones is? Archaeologist. Who's after this Sword of Rhiannon? He hears about it. He goes down. It's set in near future or the same kind of Mars that a lot of the Sword and Planet stories were in, like in a dying civilization with dried seas and stuff like that. Very influenced by John Carter of Mars and Northwest Smith, as I said. Anyway, he gets double crossed. He's trapped in the tomb. And the Sword of Rhiannon is a famous relic of the ancient Martian civilization. So he gets thrown back 1 million years in time, which is a long time. A really long time. First thing he notices, he gets out of the tomb and he notices there's a giant sea where there was previously a dry seabed. And the ruins, what in his time is let's say it's the late 21st century. Uh, the ruins of these marble docks are like brand new, and he's right in the heart of the ancient Martian civilization. He contacts people there. He makes allies. He has an adventure. He's trying to get the sword, or he's linked to the sword somehow. Uh, I'll try and stay away from doing a lengthy plot summary, but so I can keep this short. But the mythology is fantastic. I don't know if she was inspired in any part of real mythology, maybe a little bit of Egyptian mythology and stuff, but it is an entire, I guess, because we're all thinking about the Odyssey lately and things like that. Just so remarkable that she invents a whole mythos that is just for this 120-page story that appeared. I think this one actually might have been a a paperback original. Let me see if I have another copy here of a previous publication. No, I think it must have appeared. No, that's not it either. All right, forget it. But anyway, most of her stuff appeared in magazines, like most of the stuff of other writers of that time. So, okay, she can definitely do adventure, and she can do mythology, mythic adventure, and I'd say another influence in this was the story of Prometheus. There's ancient civilization. Even 1 million years ago, the time he goes back to, the civilizations on Mars are already very, very old. And there was a person named Rhiannon who effectively gave secrets away and was punished. And anyway, he at some point inhabits our hero, and it's just a great adventure, but with a lot of resonance and a lot of thought into the history. And I can see why it's a classic. Again, these old SF writers used to just throw this stuff away. That's the wrong word, but it's fascinating to me now in the era we live in when everything is like fat trilogies and tetralogies, how much world building and how much culture and everything that they would put into these books, and then and just then move on to the next project. And one of the next projects he moved up on was the 1951 The Starmen of Llyrdis. This is pretty good. This is the original pulp cover that appeared in. It was Startling Stories, pretty well known, pretty top magazine, not as big as Astounding or Amazing, but probably just right below those. I think it might have been published by the same company as Amazing. Anyway, you can see there's also an Edmund Hamilton story in there, Earthmen No More. They were, I'm not sure if they were married at this time. They were married, though, these two. And so they worked in a lot of the same magazines. Um, then it was published by Grove Press as just the Starmen. They did that for a while, and then later they came back and called it the Starman of Llyrdis again. Oh, I guess I didn't load that one. Oh well. Anyway, it's a good story about. It starts out another kind of sort of a common beginning of early science fiction, where there's this guy on Earth in modern times, the 1950s. He goes to some music festival or something. He's really depressed because he doesn't fit in anywhere, and he sees some strange people that he connects with right away, and they connect with him. It's a man and a woman, and they see him and they connect with him. Uh, and he feels like whoever they are, I belong with them, and they feel the same way. He's one of us. They turn out to be this race of star pilots. What do you call them? Navigators, things like that. Who the only humanoid race in the galaxy that has the ability to handle star travel, interplanetary travel, interstellar travel. And they take him and they test his DNA, and apparently he's got a mutation that makes him identical to them. They believe, at least at this first point, they believe it's just an accident. An accident that this one Earthman happens to have the same exact mutations as him. So this really sets off a lot of things in their culture, because these people, they have a monopoly. There's an unknown to Earth. There's a vast global. There's a vast interplanetary civilization with trade routes and everything. And these people from Llyrdis have the monopoly on trade because they're the only people who can travel through space. Um, and then finding this guy who's from Earth, which is a kind of an unaligned world, a world that doesn't even know about the Galactic Federation or whatever you want to call it, is the same as them, makes him dangerous, makes enemies. So there's a lot of economics in this, sort of like a bit of a crime syndicate kind of thing going on, which plays up, which is something that occurs in a lot of her fiction. She wrote a lot of mysteries. She wrote westerns. She wrote television. She wrote episodes of Maverick. She wrote, of course, uh, she worked with um, oh boy, Howard Hawks. I kept wanting to say John White. I don't know why, but she worked on the screenplay of The Big Sleep. She got that off writing a crime novel, a hardboiled crime novel, and Howard Hawks read it and liked it, so hired her to work on his adaptation of The Big Sleep, the Chandler novel. Later, she worked with Hawks again on Rio Bravo, one of the best westerns ever made. And other works, and she worked in TV. So, but she was always working. And she has a quote. I'll paraphrase it, where she said, it's script work is great, pays really well, but you have to wait for someone to hire you. Whereas she kept writing science fiction and mysteries all through the same period because she could sort of control her own destiny. She could make her own destiny. I don't know why she didn't want to write spec scripts and try to get them produced, or maybe she just thought she had a built-in audience in science fiction, which she did. So she wrote a lot of stuff like, what, did I save this other one? I didn't save the other one. She was able to write in many different registers, and she would write stuff that would just be just fun for people to read in a pulp magazine that month, and then other things like Sword of Rhiannon, which would really stay with people. Um, the book I just was talking about, the Starmen, is available in this 99-cent edition. It's one of the stories in this Leigh Brackett science fiction Megapack for 99 cents. There's some good stories in here. There's some okay stories in here. There's some. I notice another theme she uses a lot in her. I won't call it. I mean, it's all pulp fiction. I won't call it garbage fiction or anything like that. But her just more like meat and potatoes fiction. I think a lot of times she would use espionage plots in a space opera setting. I noticed a couple of those in these stories. I'm going to come back to these other stories. Probably have about 10 left to go next month when we're doing Randy Ray's story month. I'm not sure if it's called that, but anyway, so that's a good way to find some of her fiction. The next one is The Big Jump, and the Starmen and The Big Jump are quite they're fairly similar. Let's see where The Big Jump is. The Big Jump. Oh my goodness. I thought okay. Okay, here's the original. Open. Here's the cover. It originally appeared in a magazine called Space Stories. Oh, that glares on the photo itself. Space Stories in 1953. It's probably my least favorite of the four that I'm talking about. Space Stories, a magazine I've never heard of. Again, this is just the kind of thing she was doing, making a living every month, turning out a long novella or a full novel. The Big Jump is similar into that it also concerns some people who have special ability to travel uh, uh, faster than light. Somebody breaks through the time space barrier with the big jump, and then the main character is trying to sort it out, how it happened, what happened to the people. It's written in a very hard-boiled style. It reads like a detective novel, except that he's trying to figure out what happened in space here. So again, just another example of how versatile she was. It's probably didn't get that good of reviews from when I looked up at the time either. They're just like, yeah, it's a story. But but saying that about Leigh Brackett means you're saying that about one of the top writers of her era, um, because she could always keep you reading. It's always an entertaining story, whether or not it's the most ambitious story or not. And there's some good ideas in it, but not as many as in this next book. This was originally. Oh, what happened to it? I wanted to show you a nice thing here. Well, I lost all these things. I don't know what happened to all my photos that I meticulously preloaded for this. I'm gonna look for it one more time. Okay, forget it. The main book here, and Gavin at Genre Books 23 has a great video on this also. And I'm going to tag Book Chat with Pat. on this too because I saw a comment. She made a comment on Gavin's video that she was really looking forward to reading some Leigh Brackett. So, if Pat, if you're still watching, or if you're watching at all, and you wonder why you're tagged, that's why I just wanted to talk about some more Leigh Brackett for you, because I know you're interested in her. The Long Tomorrow. New York Times said at the time, by far Leigh Brackett's best novel to date, and comes awfully close to being a great work of science fiction. That's really kind of snotty of the New York Times and snotty of Ace to put it in there. Like, comes awfully close. It is a great work of science fiction. It is a masterpiece. I am surprised it's not. Well, it is well known within the science fiction community. Let's see if I can find. There's a more modern cover of it. It's still in print, but it's not like it should be in a New York NYRB, New York Review of Books press, or something like that, or a Penguin or something. The Long Tomorrow. It is post-apocalypse, like a lot of books. Okay, here's one of the more current covers. Just an ugly cover for an ugly century that we live in. Uh, you can see there is Howard Andrew Jones. Oh, this is probably a recent one too, because Howard Andrew Jones did the introduction to it. The Sword and Sorcery writer who recently passed away. The Long Tomorrow. It is about these two kids who grow up in a new Mennonite, or are they called the New Mennonites or the New Mennonite community after after World War III. And again, this is right after Hiroshima. This book came up, like many classic post-apocalypse stories written in the 1950s, 1955, so 10 years after Hiroshima, which is mentioned in the book. I recently talked about Fritz Leiber's Gather Darkness, which is similar. It's post bomb, post nuclear war, post nuclear Holocaust, and the survivors. Takes place about, and of course, Canticle for Leibowitz is the most famous one. So, and anyway, let me get this is a copy. This is a copy that came along. This is one that was in print for a long time. You can see the Mennonites at the top, and there's a technology kind of situation underneath. It's really set in thirds. It's a fantastic science fiction novel because it deals with all the important issues of the time and what might happen after atomic war. This is roughly 100 years after the atomic war. It's within human memory. Like these two boys are cousins, and their grandmother remembers the past. A lot of people would prefer to forget it. There's a really strong anti-technology strain running through this that the boys disagree with. They run away from. They eventually run away from their town, from the Mennonites, and go upstream. Really reminds me. Her writing here really reminds me of. This just shows how well read she was, not just science fiction, but all of American literature. Because really, there's a heavy influence of Mark Twain here in Huck and Tom stories, and I would say Faulkner too. Early Faulkner, non-experimental Faulkner. She reminded me a lot of these. She clearly knew this was a bigger story and was more ambitious with this than she was with, say, the Big Jump. But the two characters, the two boys, are really taken through it. I'm surprised this is not a crappy Netflix show. I mean, a badly lit, badly written, overdrawn out Netflix show, because it really lends itself to, or something good, a good Apple show, say, or something. It really lends itself to that because the characters are just fantastic. They come alive. It's basically three movements, three acts. I guess I'm going to say four acts. There's There's the original repressive environment. Then they move to another culture. We find out that many people are really against the idea of any kind of progress. They hate the idea of cities. They think cities are evil. There's a big set piece, big center, tragic center of the story about this guy who's building warehouses to keep his own goods, and what happens when he builds 4 warehouses and people start to get really upset that there's too many buildings. And then they go into other parts. They find more technologically based people who are working hard at a certain goal. And wow, it's just hitting me again that the fourth turning of this book, what happens at the end, it was probably really realistic. Probably not the most family friendly, or I don't mean family friendly, but probably not the most commercially friendly kind of turns the book takes at a certain point. I hope I'm not giving too much away, but there's a Brackett does not let anybody off the hook here. She does not take one side. Well, early on, she's on the side, or her characters are on the side of like this repressive, uh, sort of Luddite cult. Who's had very traditional roles they have and things like that, and very traditional expectations of what people are supposed to do, which these two boys are not interested in. Later, they see some of the advantage of that, and they see that they're trying to get to this certain city that's name escapes me now, because they've heard about it and they think it's going to be just a shining city on a hill. They find out that's not quite the case either. So she doesn't, in the end, it comes down, it's very ambiguous in the end of like, what is the best path forward for humanity? And again, the nuclear, the there's images on a walls of a certain building. There's images from Hiroshima of uh, of the destruction and the victims of Hiroshima. So it's all very new to people reading at this time, but it's still relevant. And the characterization, the people you meet along this book, uh, are as real as is in any kind of fiction. Sometimes in science fiction, they're given short shrift, like let's just have kind of a generic science guy, like as in the iRobot stories I talked about last time. Let's really not worry too much. We don't want people's personal stories getting in the way of the ideas. And that was a kind of a criticism of science fiction, which is, I think, sometimes overstated. But she's one of those writers who, and it's because I think, and it, or at least it dovetails with her ability to write in all these different genres. She could probably do any kind of writing you hired her to do, and there's probably things that she was more interested in than not. But she could write, like I say, uh, you know, episodes of Maverick where there's gamblers doing schemes, and she could write, exotic planetary adventures with a million-year mythology behind them, and she could write this story, which was really grounded in the fears of the time about nuclear holocaust and what to do about it. And at some point they have a plan. At some point, I don't want to go into that because that's giving too much weight. You can just read it as a story about these two young men going on this adventure, learning to grow up, and you can also read it for the ideas. So I think if depending on how people would package it, I think a lot of people would argue that it's not science fiction because of the way people think about stuff like that now. Like you would have these people, people who say that The Handmaid's Tale is not science fiction, for example, or would say that Station 11 by I forgot her name at the moment. And this is, if you like Station 11, you would love this novel. I believe it's better than that, but and that's a pretty good novel. But so you can market this as not science fiction. So if you got people that are being annoying about science fiction or being narrow-minded about it, you could give them this book, and I think they would enjoy it. And then you could show them the pulp cover. Then you could show them the pulpy old covers with spaceships and just freak them out about that. You trick them into writing a reading a science fiction novel. But why isn't it more famous? I wonder. There's maybe only so many slots for well-written literary post-apocalyptic fiction. Isn't The Giver this kind of story too? That new beer, that book that a lot of people read in school if they went to schools that encouraged reading, unlike the school I went to. It's right up there with those. It's right up there with Canticle for Leibowitz, and it's right up there with. It's better than Gather Darkness, I think, and that's high praise for me because I love Fritz Leiber. There's books like On the Beach that came out at this time and all that. It just really depends. The marketing just depended on what the author was famous for. On the Beach was written by Neville Shute, I think, and he'd written no science fiction before that. So it didn't come out as a science fiction novel. Good for him. Then it got made into a movie. But anyway, I guess I'll conclude by saying the New York Times was dead wrong in saying that The Long Tomorrow comes awfully close to being a great work of science fiction, because it is a great work of science fiction. That's all. I have to move on to the 60s now for the final week of Rocket Summer. I had a whole bunch of stuff else I wanted to read last week that I can get to, so I might have to do my own Rocket Summer in August to catch up on stuff. Anyway, we'll talk about the 60s next week, and it'll be some different writers. Talk to you then.